Hello and welcome back to the Royal Roundup. We've not been on here for a few weeks, but it's been a very busy few weeks for the royal family. We have had other work commitments. We've had holidays. We do sometimes try and get away from the news desks, but we are, of course, back. And we're here to bring you all of the latest royal news. We have lots to discuss this week, but we are, of course, joined by Richard Palmer, Daily Express's royal correspondent. Richard, hello.
Hello.
It's good to be back. There is lots to discuss. Of course, this week has been surrounded by various headlines. So I'm going to hand this over to you briefly so you can say what has been going on this week.
Yeah, well, we couldn't start this thing without talking about the biggest royal story of the week, which has been Prince Harry's appearance in court. But I think we can say very little about it. It's an ongoing legal case, and I think it's probably best if we leave it at that, other than to say he became the first senior member of the royal family to appear as a witness in a case for 132 years. The last one was then Prince of Wales, who later became Edward VII, when he appeared in court in a slander case, which was involving a sort of gambling scandal. So it's been sensational stuff, but I think for various reasons we should probably leave it there, other than to say we've been covering it in the Daily Express, and we will continue to cover the case, because it is a huge news story.
It is. And we definitely did want to address that before going any further on the Royal Roundup today. But we have been off for a few weeks. There is lots to be discussed other than that, which is going to swiftly move on onto the royal wedding of the year. Now, we did see the Prince and Princess of Wales make their way over to Jordan for this. And we also had a spot of Princess Eugenie as well there with Jack. Now, I think we've got some beautiful pictures we can show here. So, Richard, this was officially put down as, I think, an official royal visit, wasn't it? It wasn't a personal appearance.
Yeah, you're right. That was strange. Well, I thought it a little bit strange that it was an official engagement, and yet it wasn't announced. I'm going to correct myself, actually, because it wasn't announced in advance. But then that, of course, that does happen, quite regularly here. And I think the reason this wasn't announced in advance was probably for security reasons. So journalists, royal correspondents, were told that for planning purposes that they would be there. But I think it was a bigger event than many people imagined it would be. It was the royal wedding of the year, such a glamorous occasion. Crown Prince Hussein, Rajwa, getting married in Amman, William and Kate, and it was Beatrice, actually, wasn't it? It was Beatrice and Edo.
Yes.
Yeah, her husband Edo, I think, is a friend of the couple. Were at the wedding. I think it was, some accounts said 140 guests. I was told 150 guests at the actual ceremony in the gardens of one of the royal palaces.
Yeah, one off, yeah.
Yes, and they then moved later on to a second palace, the Hosseini Palace, where there were about 1,700 guests turned up at reception. And intriguingly, among the guests at the reception were Kate's family. Certainly her mother Carol, brother James, and sister Pippa.
So this,
So,
I mean, Richard, this begs the question then, why is it an official visit if Kate's got all of her, her immediate family there? Then it would suggest that if Kate's writing it down as an official visit, but she's got personal family there, then surely it's a personal family thing. Or do you think this is more of a political decision to put down, oh, it's an official visit, so therefore it doesn't come across badly to the public?
well, there was some discussion about this online, and my understanding is that the rest of the Middleton family travelled separately, travelled privately, um,
Mm.
and obviously they've got ties with Jordan. They lived out there when Kate was a little girl, and I don't know too much about how they've kept up with the royal family over there, but for whatever reason they were invited, and William and Kate's invitation was, I think, deemed it um, to be an official invitation. They're there representing the king
Mm.
and representing the UK. So they travelled on a government aeroplane, I think, out there.
Right. Okay. But this would obviously, because it's an official visit, taxpayers' money to be used to fly out there.
Yeah, yeah. So I think you can say taxpayers' money used to fly them out, but not their family, not her family. Um,
Okay. And obviously, you've got Kate's family there, and a couple of the other royals. Harry and Meghan weren't there. And this is due to
no.
the fact that they're not senior royals now.
um, I mean, Harry's had other things on his plate anyway, hasn't he?
Of course.
But I,
I'm just wondering that
I think they're just not. I mean, had they been close friends, presumably they would have been invited.
yeah, well, I'm just interested by the guest list. You see,
Yeah,
because of Kate's immediate family, you'd have thought that perhaps
yeah.
more of the royals would be invited.
I
But
mean, I do think it's interesting at all these events. And we've seen it the other way around, where there've been British royal weddings or
mm,
jubilees or other
mm,
things, and funerals, where some foreign royal families announce that they're going to the event and list it as an official engagement, and others treat it as a private thing. That they're going to see some friends, and I guess it's the same with constitutional monarchies all over the world, that there is often a little bit of a blurring between is this, are they there as friends, or are they there as representing the UK? And so but certainly I think William and Kate are both. They have become quite friendly with the Crown Prince and Princess.
yeah.
Uh, so I don't know if you remember Pandora, but a few years back, there was some great pictures of Prince William watching football, with
Yes, yes, I
saying,
came across that earlier.
in a sort
Yeah,
of man cave, a sort of royal man cave.
yeah.
Um, so I don't know
Well,
whether he's allowed.
obviously,
I don't know whether he's allowed to keep that now.
yeah, I'm not sure. I've got a feeling that the children might want to keep that as a games room, I'm guessing.
Oh, I don't
Maybe
know.
they've made it into something. I'm sure William has his downtime. He does go to FA Cup finals and all sorts, so I'm sure that he does definitely have time for football.
Oh,
Um, so there we go. All right then. Well, that was the royal wedding of the year, and of course, you can see all of the pictures and the coverage across it with in the Daily Express paper, and of course the site as well. There were some absolutely fabulous pictures, and Kate looking amazing. As per usual. I always look at her hair and think, where does she get her blow dry done? But that's another topic. Okay, we're going to go on to another big story which has been circulating for the past couple of weeks now, and you most likely have heard of it if you're a royal watcher and you're keeping across the news. But the late Queen's former dresser, Angela Kelly. There's been lots of speculation surrounding her, book deals perhaps, and then, of course, her relationship with King Charles and moving and all the rest of it. So we thought well, we would address it today to actually get the truth behind this all. Now, this is a picture from a fashion show. If I'm right in thinking, I think it's late 90s or early 2000s, 2004 maybe. And there she is, in between, well, the Queen, Anna Wintour, and then obviously herself. So she was very much by the Queen's side for a lot of her life, had a very personal relationship with her, as you would if you're a dresser for somebody for many, many years. So, Richard, let's clear this up then. What is going on?
Um, well, as ever with with royal stories, it's always a bit tricky to get to the bottom of it because, let's be frank, members of the royal family don't speak directly to journalists that often. Do occasionally, but um, and a lot of it is distilled through other people. I have to say that I haven't spoken directly to Angela Kelly either. And I'm not sure that any of the other journalists who've been covering this have.
Okay.
I mean, indeed, there's been some speculation that she's had to sign an NDA to prevent her speaking.
I mean,
But
is there any truth to that? Is the royal family is Charles known for doing, NDAs or anything like that?
Well, they all do. Indeed, I can remember going back quite a few years now. The then Queen's press secretary saying to me, we've resolved a lot of the problems that we had in the 1990s. When the people were leaking stuff, briefing all sorts of things against other members of the royal family and whatever. And she said that they dealt with that by firstly, strengthening the contracts that people signed when they agreed to work for the royal household, and that included the police as well. So I know the police, are told that you can't keep a diary, and I think this generation of protection officers over the last few years, have lived in fear of losing their pensions if they speak out of turn, if they talk to the media and in some cases unwittingly give them a story that the royal family doesn't like. And that all of those things didn't happen when you go back to the 80s and 90s. And I think the other key thing was that the palace really didn't pay very well at all, and a lot of people were selling stories to the press
For extra cash.
for a bit of extra cash, yeah, and that stopped. That really stopped a long, long time ago, and other bits of legislation have come in that would make that quite tricky. So anyway. I think with Angela, what's happened is that I think she's 65, if I remember rightly, and there wasn't a role for her with the King and new Queen Camilla.
Now,
Camilla's got her own. She's got her own dresser, and so I think her job had come to an end. Now, whether there was I don't know whether there was some role she could have performed still.
That was what I was going to say. Surely, with all of the, the different households, everything that goes on in the day-to-day running of the palace, the skeptic in me would think, surely there is a role here to be had by her somewhere.
Well, possibly, I don't know, but I think the other element is that she's got children and grandchildren, particularly up in the north of England, and I think she wanted to spend. My understanding is that she wanted to spend more time with them, and I was a bit frustrated. This happens sometimes in journalism. There was a Sunday paper story speculating that she might be forced out, and then I wrote a story saying that she was going to leave,
Mm.
but she hadn't been forced out.
Mm.
She just decided that she wanted to move up to sort of Derbyshire area, Peak District area, to be close to kids. And we used the story, but we used like, I don't know, about 3 or 4 paragraphs or something in the paper. And then other people wrote about it, and it just didn't
Mm.
really sort of establish
Yes.
itself as an express story. But the key thing I was told, my understanding is that she could have stayed in Windsor. She could have stayed in that house in Windsor that she's had, having retired. She could have had it for the rest of her life, and so she wasn't forced out of her home. And then it subsequently transpired that, well, it's certainly been reported that the King's actually bought a house for her up in the north
Out
of
of his
England.
own private pocket.
Yeah, I mean, probably. I mean, yes, it would. I imagine. Again, that's not been made clear.
No.
But I think it will have come from the Duchy of Lancaster money, what they call the Privy Purse.
Mm.
I think the house will revert to the crown when she's gone. But so he's bought her a retirement home up there, and so I think there's been a lot.
I
There
mean,
probably is a little bit of tension, because she was very close to the Queen,
yeah.
and um, I think a lot of people predicted that when the Queen had died, there wouldn't be a role for Angela Kelly.
Mm.
But I'm not sure it's as vicious and as tense as it's been portrayed. I just
I mean,
think.
yeah, Sloane just said, "Oh, there are rumours, something along the lines of there are rumours that Angela Kelly didn't get along with former staff." Is there any truth to that, Richard?
Um, well, I mean, yeah, clearly that over the years there were people who'd briefed against her,
Yeah.
and I suppose when somebody becomes a gatekeeper to the monarch, to the head of state, and is fiercely protective of them, then they're probably going to make a few enemies. But I know that she didn't think those characterizations were fair. I know this because I've spoken to her at palace events before. This is going back a little while now, but to me, she seemed a really nice person, and actually, quite helpful at times to people. I mean, I can remember once I was there was a story about a picture, a portrait of the Queen that the Queen actually went to unveil, and it had one of her handbags in the picture,
Hmm.
signature handbag, and I was trying to check what was the make of the handbag, because there was one particular make that she was famous for,
Yeah.
Laurier, I think. And I couldn't get an answer out of the palace. And I actually emailed Angela Kelly, and at about 9 o'clock at night, she emailed back and gave me the answer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I always, I've always thought she was a really nice person, and I don't
Mm.
really recognise this image of her as sort of AK-47. Um, but anyway, um, that's the key thing, that I don't think she was. I don't think she was forced out of her home in Windsor.
And in terms of book deals, is there
Well,
any
yeah, that's the
deal?
other thing. There was a third book in the pipeline, I think, which I
Mm.
think was going to be about the Queen's corgis, and um, it's not clear whether that's going to go ahead or not, and whether the right on cue, there they are, and whether the King would try to stop her doing that. I mean, in spite of what I said about people being forced to sign agreements that they wouldn't speak about their time in the royal house or whatever. It was very noticeable that when the Queen died, a lot of former press and communication secretaries and other people who had worked for her did come out and do television interviews, um, and I never really quite got to the bottom of what went on there, but the king obviously the new king must have given some sort of signal that it's perfectly fine if you want to go on TV to pay tribute to my mother.
So the actual rift between Charles and Angela, I'm guessing, given the fact that Charles is paying for this new house, etc., is false.
Doesn't look as if there's a major rift.
Okay, fine. Well, let's have a look at a poll then that we did about moving away from Windsor for Angela Kelly. If we've got it. If not, then no worries. We can come back to it at another time and we can move on to a different topic. Do you think the late Queen would be upset about her former dresser, Angela Kelly, moving from Windsor? And we got nearly 60% here, Richard. I thought it was an interesting question because she did have such a good relationship with the late Queen. And as we both know, lots of people from lots of different generations obviously had quite a soft spot for the late Queen too. Thoughts?
Well, I'm not surprised about that because of a lot of the reporting that's gone on, but I think she'd be happy for her that she's being given a house nearer to her grandchildren.
Yeah, exactly. And that is that bit which I didn't, I didn't know about either. So yes, lots of negative surrounding all of this, but then of course there is the positive. There you go. That's Richard's take on things. Topic 3 then. The Queen and the King have settled now after the coronation, after a very, very busy time of it. There were some pictures which were coming up online and in the paper, which did show them to be in my opinion, both a little bit fatigued, which is slightly, understandable given just how much they had on their plates. Well, they're well into the swing of things now. It wouldn't, if you cast your mind back a few weeks ago, to think these were the scenes that were going on. But yes, it was only a few weeks ago when this happened. But they're well into their reign, even though obviously it's early days. So far, then, Richard, they've had a bit of time to recoup, rest. How do you think the reign has been going for them both? Successful?
Yeah, I think it's first of all, the transition was much smoother than many people anticipated, and I think the king was. The king benefited from an outpouring of sympathy from the British public after his mother had died, and I think he's perhaps been more conservative than many of us imagined. Conservative with a small c, obviously. He seems to be, in many cases, when they're thinking about what they're going to do, it's what would the Queen have done at this time of year or with this particular type of engagement. But then on the other hand, we've seen some themes, really strong themes coming through for the new reign that I think are his signature. A commitment to multiracial, multicultural, religious tolerance, Britain, and he, I think, not barely a week goes by, certainly not a month goes by without an engagement designed to celebrate one minority community or another. So I think that's been quite interesting, and I think we're seeing his environmentalism come through. I mean, he's slightly more guarded about what he says these days, but he's still very much promoting the fight against fight to stop worst effects of climate change.
And of course, there's Camilla, the Queen, as well. And lots of people speculated as to how she would handle this role. She's a very private person. She likes being at home with her dog. She likes being in the middle of the countryside with her grandchildren. This is a very public-facing role, and obviously the public opinion has changed on them both dramatically through the years. So how do you think she's been handling things?
Yeah, she looked very nervous at first, I think, in those first few days afterwards. Clearly a lot of them were in shock, and they were grieving and extremely tired. Obviously we just see the public bits of what they do, but there'll be hours of preparation beforehand, behind the scenes as well. I think, she seems to be taking it in a stride. I mean, she's been out today to the Garden Museum in London, sort of fairly gentle engagement.
I can imagine the Garden Museum isn't a party.
No, the Garden Museum. I think that was a nice light engagement. She's just just about now finishing an engagement at Clarence House. She's just been made Colonel in Chief of the Royal Lancers, which is effectively her father's old regiment. So that's a new military appointment for her. That's just been announced about a minute ago, and she's continuing with her work on promoting literacy. She's stocking primary school libraries around the country with Coronation libraries in some of the areas where there are low levels of literacy and children don't tend to have access to books at home. It's more of the same from Camilla, really. She's
doing, by the sounds of it, she's doing things that she wants to do. And do you think she has a major influence over Charles with what he's doing as well?
Does she have an influence? I'm sure she does it in some aspects of the work, but they do their own thing. They seem pretty comfortable with each other. I guess there's a bigger issue is there are fewer royals around, and they're all getting quite old. Or a lot of them are.
Well, this is what we're going to discuss in the next topic. So before we get to the next topic, Richard, the cost of the coronation, because we didn't actually have a coronation episode, and I thought this was really interesting. I did see a graphic on the website, so do feel free to say what you think of this. I think we can get it up. The coronation cost compared. Now, when we spoke about the reign of King Charles, we did say, he's very well aware of the cost of living crisis, how it was going to be a smaller coronation. He did rein back on some things, pardon the pun. And this apparently is the cost compared. 100 million versus 56. Now, can you give this any context or any kind of feedback?
Well, the main context I can give is that £100 million figure is just plucked out of the air. We don't know what the cost of the coronation is yet.
Okay.
We did get figures on the official figures on the cost of the Queen's state funeral and all those events in those sort of 10 or 11 days around there, and I have to say that was more expensive than I imagined it would be, but that covered everything, including police costs, security costs. And I would still be surprised if we got to £100 million for what was essentially was it 3 days? 3 days of activities.
It was 3 days of activities. Yeah.
And the main, the coronation itself Saturday, and then the two other days, the Sunday and the Monday.
Of course, the coronation.
I didn't think that much taxpayers' money was used in that. Sloane's asking, is the 56 million 1950? Yeah, that's 53. That's that's at today's prices. I mean, it depends which index you use.
Yeah, so this
But
was
I've used that figure, and it's about the highest figure. There are different inflation calculators essentially, and it depends which one you use. So,
cost of living is very relevant and inflation at the moment. But I just
yes.
thought I would bring that up. But
Mm.
you've cleared that up. The actual cost hasn't been revealed yet. Will
No,
it ever be revealed, Richard?
yeah, it will be. I think by the Treasury at some point, but I think it was it about 6 months before we got the figures for the Queen's state funeral and all those other events around it. So it may be a little while yet.
Okay. Well, we're gonna spin this round to a poll now. What do you think of the King and Queen's reign so far and predictions? That was my little bit of dyspraxia going out there. Do you think King Charles and do you think the King Charles reign has been a success so far? Yes, 66%. No, 33%. And as we know with these polls, obviously, this is quite a biased audience for the Daily Express audience on our Twitter. So you will get Royal fans, and then perhaps you won't get some Royal fans. But there we go. Okay. Richard did briefly mention this topic, so I'm very pleased that he did because he's sort of saved me a job here. But as he did say, obviously there are less senior working royals now. You know, the King and Queen aren't getting any younger. None of us are. And there's more pressure on the working senior members of the royal family than ever before. And no, much more than the pressure on the Prince and Princess of Wales, Kate and William. We have seen them both being very busy. William's at an event today. Kate was at a rugby training ground yesterday with her, well, I should say new role, but she's had it for a fair few months now. Richard, is there a huge strain on them? They obviously seem to be handling it well, despite how busy everything is. You know, there's a massive pressure, I guess, for the royal family to stay relevant, and I guess it's sort of on their heads slightly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky balance. I think that the number of working royals has got smaller, and so many of them are past retirement age. And if you think um, King and Queen are well past retirement age, Princess Anne, Duke of Kent, Duke of Gloucester, Duchess of Gloucester, Princess Alexandra, they're all well past retirement age. Edward and Sophie are in their late 50s, 59 and 58, I think. And then you've got William and Kate, 41 and 40. So I think it's a bit of a problem for the monarchy because, of course, ardent royalists will tell you that it's not a popularity contest. The whole idea of constitutional monarchy is that whoever's next in line becomes king and or queen, and that we stick with that. But it does mean that the monarchy is an aging institution at the moment, and that could become a problem. It's going to be a long time before Prince George and maybe Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis come on the scene and start doing royal engagements. So we've got a long time of a lot of, and inevitably the older members of the family will do less and less. So
yeah, of course.
I think the British monarchy is going to have to cut back on the number of things it does, the number of engagements, the number of foreign trips, and the question is, will that hit its popularity? I'm not sure, because I think we've seen this in other constitutional monarchies in Europe, that the number of working royals has been reduced quite significantly in a lot of those countries. And I personally, I was surprised that the late Queen's cousins didn't all retire en masse when the change of reign happened. But
No.
clearly, they want to do what they can to help for the moment.
Mm. Okay. Well, as you said, it would be interesting to see whether things get cut back or not. But then, of course, the question I'm guessing will come from the public. Well, if they're, cutting back, then perhaps in terms of the money that the royal family receive from the public, which is a whole nother topic, which, Richard, I know you do like getting into the depths of
I can bore for
finances.
England. I can bore for England on that topic.
Yeah. Sloane said, as of the future, the Waleses are getting more pressure, but the kids getting older, so it's the right time for them. But Kate does really want the kids to have some sort of privacy, doesn't she?
Well, I mean, probably the most important thing to say is that she's made it clear that the kids will remain her. Being a mum to those kids is her primary job still, in her view, and whatever else she does is in addition to that. So I haven't looked at the statistics for royal engagements lately, but I'm not sensing that they've dramatically increased the number of engagements they're doing. William and Kate, I think they tend to take most school holidays off with their kids, and they tend to do a couple of engagements a week on average. I'd say they're not doing huge numbers of engagements. So it just means fewer charities get royal visits. Fundraising might be affected. Well, again, that's a whole new topic, because there was a report that came out a few years ago that suggested that there was no real evidence that having a royal patron actually helped you raise money. Well, I know charities that would tell you differently, but that's what that report concluded.
I'm guessing it would bring, though, a lot of brand awareness if they visit it. So if that equates to money, I don't know.
It brings brand awareness, and I suppose the whole idea of or not one of the ideas of a constitutional monarchy in the 21st century is that these figureheads turn up at your event, and if it's a fundraising event, lots of wealthy people want to meet them, be associated with them, and are willing to pay money, to a good cause to do that.
Which again is a whole nother topic. I guess one final question from me, Richard, and it's absolutely fine if you don't want to answer this, but I'm guessing from a family perspective, because obviously when Harry and Meghan were here and they were senior working royals, they could take a lot of these engagements on, and now William has to take this on with his family, more pressure on him. I'm guessing that might feed into the relationship of just brothers between them. I'm guessing that's something perhaps William has made peace with, or perhaps something he hasn't made peace with.
You're just asking me to speculate, really. I mean, there just seems to be nothing going on with that relationship between the brothers, or lack of it, as far as we can tell.
There's constantly rumours flying around, Richard, of the brothers coming together and the brothers not coming together. So it'd just be interesting to see how this relationship pans out across the years, I guess. But yeah.
I mean, everybody's looking for a story about reconciliation, but it might never happen, because if you think about Edward VIII and Mrs. Simpson, Edward and Mrs. Simpson, after the abdication, they never really fixed their relationship with the Queen Mother or some other members of the royal family. And while the Queen and the then Prince Charles did try to make an effort to include them every now and again, that relationship was broken from then on. So that might still happen here.
Families, you can't.
Exactly.
Okay then. Looking on to the rest of the week, Richard. where can we see the royal family? If we can see them at all, it's Thursday, so we might not be talking about next week.
Well, I always have trouble because I can never remember off the top of my head what's been announced and what's sort of embargoed for security or other reasons. But what you can say is that Royal June is the busiest month normally, and sort of second half of May and June, busiest months in the year. There's a whole lot of engagements coming up, and what we didn't mention actually, which I talked about before the program, is the Derby and the fact that there was no senior member of the royal family at this, the greatest flat race in the world, which was a sort of annual fixture in the Queen's calendar. I think Zara was there, but no working royals because the King was in Romania on a little 5-day trip. But I think I'd be led to believe that we will see a big royal turnout at Royal Ascot in the third week of June. And before that, we've got there'll be Garter Day on the Monday of that week at Windsor. There'll be we've got Trooping the Colour, the first King's official birthday parade on June the 17th, and this coming Saturday, as a precursor to that, we've got the Colonel's Review, and because it's the Welsh Guards who are given they take it in turns to give a particular regiment the honour of trooping their colour. It's the Welsh Guards this year, so their new colonel, Prince William, will be overseeing the Colonel's Review at Horse Guards this coming Saturday. So some nice colourful images.
I was about to say, I bet that's going to make for some great images. It always looks great, doesn't it, when the army are all there together. Okay. Well, that's what to expect. It's been a busy few weeks for the royal family. It's been a busy few weeks for Richard. So we are now back weekly with the Royal Roundup after a bit of a break, which you can catch usually every Thursday at around lunchtime, time to be confirmed, on both Richard's and the Daily Express's socials. You'll also see it on mine on Twitter, easy to find. For Richard, it's Royal Reporter. For me, it's Pandora Forsyth, very easy, or at the Daily Express. You can catch up on our playlist on Facebook, and of course, we premiere on YouTube every Friday. So you'll have all of the episodes so far from the Royal Roundup up there. If you want to go back in time, go into a time machine and find out what we were doing this time last year, then you can. If you did fancy it. And of course, you can catch all of the latest lines from the Royal Roundup on our Instagram too. So lots of places to find us is essentially what I'm saying. Richard, we could have gone into lots of different topics there, but there'll be much more to discuss next week, I'm sure. Thank you for tuning in. Sorry it's been so long since we last had one, but we'll be back regularly from now on. Richard, thank you.